So where does the UFC go from here when it comes to the BMF belt? Well, I think the easiest solution would be you just get rid of it. You get rid of it because the last fight that we saw was the exact opposite of what the quote spirit of the belt is supposed to be, which is basically a stand-up brawl. That's it. There's no ground game. It is two guys in the middle swinging. And the truth is they really should have retired it after Max pointed down to the ground and knocked out Justin Gaethje with 1 second left because they're never eclipsing that moment. But this is the UFC, and they won't do that. I don't know anyone's clamoring to see another BMF title fight. And what I mean by that is the fights themselves are good. They're good fights. They're very good fights. They're evenly matched up. I'm talking like, is the actual title being on the line drawing more eyeballs to the sport? Is it drawing more eyeballs to Paramount Plus? I don't believe so. I think most of the time the fans can see through the BMF bullshit. Nobody's going, oh my God, we got to watch this because the BMF belt's on the line. Is that any different than watching, let's say, Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis? Like that could have been a BMF belt title fight because that was two guys swinging bombs. There's no real ground. I mean, other than, Dustin jumping Gilly, there's not a lot of ground game. You know that going in. So I don't think anyone would have signed up less for a Poirier Benoit Saint Denis, or let's say a Benoit Saint Denis Justin Gaethje fight. I don't think people are signing up less for that because there's no BMF belt on the line. But again, this is the UFC, and they're at that stage now where every single pay-per-view has to have a belt on the line if it isn't Conor. So where does the belt go? Well, when it comes to Charles Oliveira, the easiest solution is you just act like he didn't win it. Meaning, like, he doesn't have to defend it. You have to remember, the history of the BMF belt started because of Nate Diaz calling out Jorge Masvidal in a very respectful call-out. Nate Diaz ends up beating Anthony Pettis in a journeyman fight, and then he called out a fellow journeyman. And he said, Jorge Masvidal is a gangster, but he ain't no West Coast gangster, and thus built the BMF belt. And it was supposed to be a one-off. This was supposed to be a one-off for Madison Square Garden because they did not have a true headlining fight. So what they did was they created this bullshit belt, and it was the promise of like, okay, this is going to be a war, and it wasn't. It was one-way traffic. Jorge Masvidal destroyed Nate Diaz, opened up the scar tissue, and But then a funny thing happened. They brought it back. They brought it back for Dustin versus Justin, and they just acted like it didn't happen. Because the first belt takes place at 170, and then Justin versus Dustin takes place at 155, and then thus built this journeyman belt for the 155 division, where, after that it goes to Justin versus Max, and then Max versus Dustin, and then finally Max versus Charles Oliveira. But it was supposed to be a one-off. And it wasn't like they quote-unquote stripped Jorge Masvidal of the belt. They just moved it to a division. Now, again, I would love if they just got rid of the damn thing because I think it's stupid. It's a made-up journeyman belt. But the spirit of the belt is we are promising the viewer a war, and that's why I thought that Charles Oliveira getting a title shot for this belt was dumb because the fight played out kind of like I thought it would. I mean, I had Charles winning, and I didn't understand why he was such a heavy underdog. But a grappler with an elite ground game taking a striker to the ground, yeah, I mean, I think people a lot of times forget in their contracts, you get one amount to just show up, and then the other amount you only get if you win. So I don't blame Charles Oliveira for that. But when it comes to the belt itself, there was a lot of time between the first BMF belt fight and the second BMF belt fight where you kind of just forgot about the fact that Jorge Masvidal even won it because it was kind of a forgettable fight. It was so much one-way traffic. Albeit a forgettable fight, but one that nobody claimed was boring because it was a striking fight. I mean, it was Jorge Masvidal mauling Nate Diaz, but he was doing it with punches and elbows, and that's one of the things of this BMF belt. There's like an unspoken agreement, I guess, and they brought this up in the post-fight presser with Dana of like we're not gonna really do grapple and submissions. It's one-way traffic is fine. Dominant performance is fine. It needs to be striking. So who fits this bill? Again, this is a journeyman belt. This is a belt for guys that could headline cards, but are probably never going to be in the title picture again. And it's funny I say that in the sense of like Max is probably still in the title picture. Charles Oliveira certainly still in the title picture. Obviously Justin too. But when you look at the initial fight that made this whole belt possible, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal are not getting title fights anytime soon. And I think that's what they need to revert back to. They need to revert back to the guys that are known by the casual fan that they can throw in a banger of a highlight package together, and then you put it on the line for there. And the easiest solution for this, by far, is Conor McGregor against Jorge Masvidal at 170, because those two guys will trade. Those two guys will stand and trade. They already had a conversation about it before. And initially, when Jorge Masvidal won the belt, if you remember, Conor McGregor showed interest in it, and Masvidal said, well, I gave that belt to my father, and we're going to have to put some equity on the line, proper 12 equity versus whatever equity he's got, like some tequila company or something. Masvidal has like something. But he talked about like putting equity on the line because, he gave the belt to his dad or something like that. And then he just never defended it, and thus it went to 155. If Conor's truly coming back, Conor's never fighting for a belt again. He hasn't fought in 5 years, and he's one of the few fighters that he doesn't need a belt to be on the line to headline a card. And I think, if memory serves me correct, he was the last guy to headline a pay-per-view where there was no belt on the line, and that was Donald Cerrone. I think the UFC, though, would like to build him up and build up his resume even more, build up the legend of Conor McGregor by being able to say he is the first man to ever hold two belts simultaneously, even though he never defended the featherweight title. He is the 155 champion, 144, 145, 145, 155. First man to headline MSG, and then you add, and the reigning defending BMF belt holder, blah, blah, blah. It just helps bring him back, and I think even though Conor himself is a draw, no matter how long the layoff has been, I think this is the easiest solution for what you do with the belt. And then maybe you get back to straight up like the Dan Hookers, the Michael Chandlers, the guys that don't mind getting their face pummeled in. That's really the spirit of the belt. Both those guys are never fighting for a belt. But I could certainly see both of those guys putting on a really, really exciting, good performance. And I think that's what you need to do with the BMF belt. If you're not going to get rid of it, which the UFC will not get rid of, they're probably in the process of actually creating another bullshit belt, which is the pound for pound belt. If Alex Pereira ends up winning and defeating Cyril Gane, I could totally see them handing him a heavyweight title and a PFP title, which again I don't even know how you defend that. If Islam Makhachev at 170 is the second best, can he fight Alex Pereira, who's at heavyweight? No, you can't. It's stupid. But if they're not going to get rid of it, so what you need to do is you need to move it a division. And I think that there is an avenue where you give yourself an out, because if Ilya is never fighting down at 155 ever again, and if he's going to go up to 170 after this fight with Justin, which I assume he is going to, I would expect him to beat Justin pretty easily and then move up to 170 and try to get his third belt. If that's going to happen, then you're going to have a Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan for the vacant, lightweight title. And thus, no one's going to be thinking about Charles Oliveira having the BMF belt and defending it. And after that, you can, move on and you could have just fun fights. Because for me, that's what I look at for this BMF belt is it's the fun fight belt. It's the promise of you're getting a banger of a fight. Unfortunately, we didn't really get that, and that's the problem. The UFC needs to be better matchmakers with this belt. They need to find two guys that are going to trade. Jorge Masvidal having the layoff that he's had. Conor McGregor having the long layoff that he's had. Both these guys are going to be willing to stay and trade. And we've seen Conor McGregor twice at 170, and they both did the Nate Diaz fight. If they want to do Nate Diaz, the trilogy, I'd be cool with that. If they want to do Max and Conor at 155, I'd be cool with that too. I don't know how you give Max another BMF Belt title shot, though, when he just lost. But I would love to see that. There's a lot of fun fights for Conor out there, but I would fully expect them to attach this bullshit BMF belt to it. And if you're going to do that, Jorge Masvidal is the obvious choice. They've talked about it before. Conor is way too big, probably, I think, for 155 at this point, so he'd move up to 170. He probably could make 155 if he really, really put his mind to it, but he's bulked up. So that's what I would do with the BMF belt. I mean, my first choice, as I said, would be to just get rid of it entirely, but they're not going to do that. So, yeah, Conor, Jorge, let's say MSG. Will they do MSG? Because, again, Conor's in such a weird situation where I'm using Conor in a spot that is already in a spot that isn't big, like International Fight Week, which now I think is the White House card. That spot's already big. The MSG fight, that usually is a big fight. I'm probably using Conor in like August, maybe January, because the December card, the late December card, is usually pretty good. But I'm using him in a spot where you can water down an entire main card and then just have Conor McGregor, and he's the draw. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. As far as comments go, I'm probably only going to respond to channel members. So become a channel member. It'd be cool. Support your boy. All right? Please. But subscribing is cool. You can subscribe. Hit thumbs up if you like this video. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. And I am going to go eat Girl Scout cookies. Goodbye.